Payment Best Practices for Controllers and CFOs, a CPE webinar brought to you by the Controllers Council. My name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the Controllers Council. And before I introduce our expert panelists and our partner sponsor, let me share some brief housekeeping items. We'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our experts questions. Next, this webinar is CPE eligible with 4 polling questions, so please answer each poll, or if not for CPE, to benchmark your peers. Please allow up to 1 week for CPE certificates to be emailed to you. And also regarding CPE, you'll receive a brief survey directly after the webcast, so please complete. And finally, you'll receive a link to this webcast via email in the next 24 hours, so no need for notes or screenshots. With that, a brief word about our partner and sponsor. AvidXchange is a leader in automating invoice, payment, and accounts payable processes for mid-market organizations. AvidXchange processes more than 215 billion transactions annual with 1,600 employees, 8,800 customers, and 225 systems integrations. Learn more at AvidXchange.com. And it is my pleasure to introduce our subject matter experts and panelist speakers, Jamie Proctor and Rhonda Green. Jamie is a Senior Solutions Consultant at AvidXchange. Rhonda is Principal Solutions Consultant at AvidXchange. Jamie and Rhonda, welcome today.
Thank you, Neil.
And Rhonda, you can take it away.
Awesome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll start by unpacking the growing inefficiencies tied to paper-based payment systems. Yes, they still exist in many organizations. Then we'll discuss how electronic payment methods are gaining traction and what's really driving this dash for digital. We'll also walk through a breakdown of the entire AP automation journey, from procurement to invoice processing through to payment execution. And we'll also share guidance on how to evaluate the growing ecosystem of e-payment technologies. Finally, we'll show you how a platform like AvidXchange can bring all of these elements together into one seamless workflow. So let's talk about top priorities and challenges. AvidXchange conducted a survey of 500 finance executives at middle market companies in September of 2023 to understand their priorities and concerns as they planned for 2024. And what we found was the top priorities and concerns really mirror each other, with the top 3 being data protection, security, and regulatory compliance. Number 2 being digital transformation, and the third one being creating operational efficiencies. I think this is pretty standard. I would think that data protection, security, and regulatory compliance would always be at the top of the list, but I think we all know in this world of digital transformation that we're living in that we've got to learn all about it and really stay on top of new trends, and we have to be proactive in upskilling our workforce so that they are prepared for all of the AI and digital transformations to come. So, additional top concerns of finance departments for that same survey, we found that the top 3, again, security, fraud, and phishing attempts. Number 2 was data management, and number 3 was the digital skills gap of teammates. So again, security and fraud always top of mind. Phishing attempts, unfortunately, continue to be a big problem with these bad actors really amping up their strategies. Phishing attempts, unfortunately, still remain one of the top areas that customers have to be diligent about. Also, of course, data management. You want to keep everything secure. And again, really emphasizing that digital skills gap of teammates, making sure that everyone is getting the necessary training so that they understand how to really use these new digital skills that are being released and will continue to be in the future. Jamie?
Thanks, Rhonda. So we're going to talk more about just parting ways with paper. So as we can tell, a lot of companies, their priority is to kind of, reduce paper, add more digitization into their company. So we still see a lot of organizations relying on paper-based workflows, AP workflows, and that reliance really creates a drag on operations. When invoices need to be printed, physically walked down the hall for approvals, or even manually scanned and emailed across different teams, we're finding that companies are not only wasting time, but they're also creating opportunities for human error and lost documentation. This next slide just shows you a little quote from our very own Rhonda Green. Paper adds all kinds of inefficiencies to the process. When you're trying to manually route invoices for approval, again, walking them down the hall, sending a scanned copy in an email, you're adding lots of time to the process and increasing the odds of a document being misplaced. And we honestly see that every single day when we're talking with different prospects in the market and people having issues with missed payments, duplicate invoices, and even compliance risks. So only 8% of organizations are using checks most often to pay with suppliers. This data point tells us something powerful. Really, that a lot of really only about 88% of organizations are still using checks as their primary payment method, which is actually a massive drop, and it's part of a larger trend. So more and more businesses are recognizing that paper checks aren't just slow, they're also costly and vulnerable to fraud. I can't even tell you how many times I've spoken with a client or a prospect that say that what made them move to AP automation was truly check fraud. Unfortunately, that's still pretty heavy and happening, all over the country today. If your organization is still check heavy, you're quickly becoming the exception rather than the norm. And that can really put you at a competitive disadvantage. Not only are clients and companies wanting to get away from paper and checks, but suppliers don't want to receive checks either. They don't want to be at risk for fraud. They want to make sure that they're getting their funds faster and removing that potential for things to go wrong. So it's really happening all over the market. Check fraud, again, is increasing. So the U.S. Treasury Department has reported a 385% increase in check fraud since the pandemic. Really, that is a staggering statistic and one that should cause every finance leader to rethink their risk management strategies. 76% of organizations have experienced payment fraud within the last year, with paper checks being the #1 culprit. The financial losses can be huge, ranging from tens of thousands to millions of dollars. Digital payment tools not only speed up the process, but they offer stronger fraud detection and encryption. So again, checks accounted for the largest share of related financial loss, ranging from even as little as $50,000, which is not really little, but to more than $1 million. And I've seen this happen with clients, primarily with checks, but even as something as simple as an email, having approvals and approval workflows going through email versus a more secure AP automation process. I've seen some fraud, risk from that point as well. When you zoom out and look at North America, the shift away from checks is unmistakable. So B2B payments are getting more and more increasingly digital, and not just for large enterprises. SMBs are also embracing automation because it's affordable, scalable, and necessary for modern cash flow. So you can see here just the percentage of B2B payments made by check in the US to Canada from 2004 all the way up until 2002, and it's continuously, I cannot talk today, decreasing. So you can see in 2004, about 81% of those payments were made via check, compared to 2002, and I would even say 2025 is probably maybe even half that number, but 33% in 2022, which is a huge difference as far as, just suppliers receiving checks, and then also clients just getting away from even issuing them in the first place.